What is the cinematic look? And why is it that Hollywood films look so good? Is it the camera? Is it the lens they use? Well, I'm here to tell you guys that the key to getting the cinematic look has nothing to do with either one of those. It has everything to do with your lighting and where you place your camera. Now, some of you guys might be saying to yourself, well, I don't have a huge budget and I don't have a ton of lights. But today I'm going to show you guys how to get the cinematic look by only using one light source. In fact, we're going to break down 8 different looks that you guys can get by using just one light. The first lighting setup that we're going to talk about today is something that's very common in Hollywood, and that is the reverse key lighting technique. In order to achieve this look, you guys are going to have to place your key light either slightly behind or at an acute angle to your subject and place your camera on the dark side of your character. Now, as you guys can see in this shot right here, you see we're shooting towards the shadow side of my face while our key light is slightly behind me on the opposite side of the camera, hence the name reverse key lighting. This is a lighting technique that's been used over and over again in Hollywood and something that I really love using, especially when it comes to interviews. If you take a look at this interview that I shot right here, this is a perfect example of using reverse key lighting and shooting on the dark side of my subject. Now, this reverse key lighting effect is a great way of just adding a little bit of dramatic shadow, giving it what we would normally call the cinematic look. But since we're talking about that cinematic look, there is nothing more notorious for this than the backlighting effect. The backlight is like a cinematographer's magic trick. The second that your subject or an object is backlit, it automatically starts to look good. Here's an example of backlighting. As you can see, we're shooting the light right at the back of my head and leaving the rest of myself in shadow. But there are many different ways that you guys can use backlighting. Another example would be this shot right here. We had a tungsten light shooting right through the window, and we added a little bit of haze just to give it this dreamy sunset effect. And believe it or not, this was all shot only using one light. And all you guys have to do when you're trying to backlight your subject is put your camera between the light and your subject and just move your camera around a little bit, and I promise you guys, you're gonna get that cinematic effect. Now, the next lighting technique that we're gonna talk about is something that took me a little bit longer than I like to admit to realize, but it's such an awesome technique that is extremely powerful when used correctly. And the lighting technique that I'm talking about is top-down lighting. Top-down lighting is exactly as it sounds. It is literally taking a light source and shooting it right down at your subject. Taking a look at this example right here, you can see that the light only touches me and really doesn't spill around too much into the background. Top-down lighting is great for giving that dramatic or sinister dark look, especially when you're only using one light with it. As you guys can see, it's creating shadows in my eyes and around my inner cheeks. Now, of course, you could always make this a little less dramatic by putting some sort of bounce below your subject's face. And just so you guys can see an example of this is what it looked like with a bounce. But if we take a look at this shot from one of my documentaries, I think top-down lighting is great to use on athletes because it outlines their muscular features on their body while still giving it that dark and mysterious kind of look. Now, in this particular scene, what we did was we added this top-down lighting, but we also added tube lights on the back of the cage, and then we're also acting as practicals and backlighting our subject, which definitely gave it that cinematic look. And the next technique that we're going to talk about is something called split lighting. Split lighting is a really awesome technique that literally splits a light side and a dark side of your subject's face. Again, pretty dark and sort of mysterious looking. I think that this shot is great for showing someone who could be conflicted or having some sort of dual personality. I could definitely see something like this being used in a true crime documentary or maybe even like some sort of detective film. Now, all you have to do to get an effect like this is take your key light and put it 90 degrees on either side of your subject. Now, if you take that light and you move it 45 degrees closer to the center of your subject, now you have yourself one of the most famous lighting techniques in all of Hollywood, and that is the Rembrandt lighting look. And they call this the Rembrandt look because it was made famous from the painter Rembrandt. He painted his subjects with an upside down triangle of light casted by the nose on one side of the subject's face. And if we take a look at this example right here, you guys can see some really nice contrasting shadows on this side of my face, but you could clearly see the upside down triangle, which makes you feel a little bit less dark and ominous and just kind of gives a nice shadowing contrast around the rest of my face, but just adding a little bit more visual interest than the split lighting effect. And like I said, all you have to do to achieve this look is take your light and place it about 45 degrees away from the center of your subject. And when you see that upside down triangle on your subject's face, that's when you know you got it right. Now, I've shown you guys a lot of different ways to create dramatic looks, but there is going to come a time when you're going to need to have something called flat lighting. And flat lighting is exactly how it sounds. It's where you fill in all the shadows on your subject's face and give a really flat but clean look. And yeah, while there isn't any dramatic shadows or contrast and, some would say even visual interest, there is going to be a time where you're going to need to use something like this in either a commercial or a corporate project that you're filming, and you might want something a little bit lighthearted and less dramatic. And all you guys have to do to create this lighting effect is take your key light and place it right in the middle of your subject's face, and you have yourself a flat lighting look. But if you guys want to add just a little bit more contrast and visual interest to your shot, you could try something called paramount lighting. Again, just like the flat lighting, you kind of put it right in the center of your subject, but you put the light up and you place it about 45 degrees down. That way you have this little butterfly looking shadow underneath your nose. Now, this is still a lot less dramatic than everything else that we've talked about before that. It still has a little bit more of that lighthearted feel, but it has a little bit more visual interest and contrast. But again, if you still want something lighthearted and you want to add just a little bit more contrast to the face, then we could try something called loop lighting. And very similar to the paramount lighting effect, you're gonna have your light up and angled about 45 degrees down, but this time you're gonna move it about 25 to 45 degrees to the left or the right of your subject. And now you have something that gives just a little bit more shadow, a little bit more depth to your subject's face, but still keeping a less dramatic commercial look. Now, these are all pretty basic techniques, but I feel like if you guys keep this in your mind as you're lighting a scene or a documentary, I think it's gonna help you guys tell better stories, because you're gonna have a good understanding of all the different tools in your toolkit. I always think that even though this is basic stuff, if you get really, really good at the basics and you want to tell a story with your lighting, you can do it because you understand where to place the light and what effect that's going to give to you guys. And if you guys want to learn more about filmmaking, me and my team are putting together a filmmaking course that we plan on releasing by the end of summer. So if you guys want to sign up for the email list, we will notify you guys as soon as the course drops. I want to thank you guys so much for stopping in and hanging out. My name is Alex Zarfati, and I'll see you guys next week. Deuces.